Hello, Serendipitous here with another board game shelf video. It is time to talk about my own print and play project, my own game design project, honestly. My own Brawlhalla card game, which I'm currently calling Odin's Conquest. That's a decent enough name. I don't know if there's if I can come up with a better name right now, but um, essentially this is a game. This is a card game that I've worked on throughout all of 2023, and I was able to actually bring a good playable version of it to BCX 2023 in person and have a bunch of people play it, which was fantastic. Essentially, what I have here in this Hawaiian Punch box is the pre-alpha version. This was the very first version that I actually printed. Uh, so, Once again, I just kind of basically, I just wanted a version of the game that was like playable enough to playtest. Unfortunately, I wasn't really able to playtest this very much before making the alpha version. But if nothing else, it making this gave me the experience of like creating a card game myself, and kind of which honestly helped me a lot to make the true alpha version a lot better. There are two different kinds of cards in here, which apparently are kind of a bit mixed up. So I'm just sort of separating them real quick. I can tell the different kinds of cards because there's portrait and there's landscape. I also have had help from people. Mickey and Qstone helped me with the design of the front and back. But as far as game design goes, that's pretty much entirely me. So, what did I do with a Brawlhalla card game? Essentially, I was inspired by Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is an excellent game that is very simple to learn. One match takes like just a few minutes to play, usually, at least on mobile. And Marvel Snap also is it's a very it's a very lore focused game. Like, lore is not the only thing about Marvel Snap that is cool, but it uses lore to inform the design of the characters and the locations. So that's basically what we have here. Each legend is represented by a card here. There is a cost and there is a strength value to it, and they have various abilities. Usually, a lot of these in the pre-alpha version were ripped straight out of Marvel Snap. And then you have location cards, which, just like in Marvel Snap, you reveal them throughout the course of the game, and these location cards have effects. And you basically have three locations, and what you want to do is you want to control two out of the three locations. And the way you control locations is you play legend at location, then you compare your total strength at a location. All right? If your total strength at a location is higher than your opponent's total strength, then you win this location. And the game ends after 6 rounds, generally. And that's pretty much it. That's how you play Marvel Snap, and that's how you play Odin's Conquest. So, yeah. Like I said, this wasn't really play tested all that much, but I was very proud of the fact that I was able to actually make a functional game. I also, in addition, it's not exactly like Marvel Snap. In Marvel Snap, people play their cards at the same time, but in here you actually take turns. And so the resource management system that I chose is from the Digimon card game. In the Digimon card game, you have a memory gauge that goes from 10 to 0 and 10, basically. And so on your turn, so on the first play, let's say that the memory gauge is on 3 on your side. And you can play any card you want, but any card that you do play, let's say you play this one with a cost of 2, then it goes down from 3 on your side to 1 on your side. You can play another card, let's say you play this, which is 2 more, and it goes 1 on your side, then 0. Then the memory gauge goes from 1 to 0, and then 1 on your opponent's side. And the way that this resource system works is that as soon as the memory gauge is on your opponent's side, so it passes 0 onto 1 or more on your opponent's side, your turn is over. You can't play any more cards, and it's your opponent's turn. And so there's this very interesting back and forth where you can technically play any cards you want, even if you only have one on your side of the memory gauge. You can play a card that costs 10, and it'll go to 9 on your opponent's side, and so you have that really powerful card on the board. But the trade-off is that your opponent now has 9 on the memory. They have 9 memory that they can play a bunch of cards to sort of answer this big card that you just played. So it's very much a really cool back and forth where you can play any cards you want, but there's still a really good trade-off. And so I have kind of renamed for this game. I've renamed it the Timeline, and I've decided to restrict it to just 5 on each side instead of 10. And also it can't go any further than 5 on each side. Even if you have 5 time on your side, then the most expensive card you could ever play is 10, which will bring it to 5 on your opponent's side. The costs of these cards are adjusted accordingly, essentially. But yeah, so that was the pre-alpha, and the main So I keep this version of the game just because, again, it's the first version I have. I might need to use these card sleeves at some point in the future, so I might actually tear this down sometime in the future. But for now, I have this pre-alpha version just to sort of, as an example of my very first card game that I have designed and printed and played. And this Hawaiian Punch box is the perfect way to store them, even if it's not the best way. It perfectly fits all of them, even if it's not the best kind of box. So where did I go from here? I went from, so that was I considered that the pre-alpha, just kind of like my first foray into actually printing and playing cards. Here is the alpha version. I use this Altoids box to kind of have, the game as it is right now requires you to have like a couple of dice and some counters to keep track of like the time on the timeline, as well as +1 and -1 counters for the strength, to modify the strength of cards. But here, there's a lot more cards in here, mainly because I wanted to give Brawlhalla fan artists an opportunity to have their fan art shown in this game. So that's why we have multiple versions of Ada here, because we have art from Jadewares, art from Sunsero. Sunsero was very generous. We have Arcadia art from Sunsero and from Takona, and also from Usmanga, and so on and so forth, right? So every single legend is represented in here. Every legend before Loki. Like I made this alpha version before Loki was released. Obviously, I will be making Loki and 7 cards. And then we have the location cards as well. There's 25 locations represented by various locations in the lore and the various maps in the game. And then we also have the timeline, which works like this, basically. So this was the version, this was what I brought with me to BCX 2023. And people loved it. Anyone who tried it out just absolutely loved the game. To make it easier, I made pre-made decks. 4 pre-made decks that are kind of center around a particular mechanic, whether it be like KOs, or there's a Batavia deck that focuses on discarding to gain power. There's a Fangwild deck that I made that focuses on moving cards around. But you can make a deck out of any. So a deck is only 12 cards, just like in Marvel Snap. So you can make a deck honestly very easily. Because personally, as much as I like constructed deck games, I have a hard time constructing decks, especially if you have to make a deck of 30 or heck 60 cards. I struggle to make good decks, to really think about how all the cards will play with each other and stuff. But 12 cards for a deck, that is much more manageable, and I think that's much more accessible to a lot more people. But yeah, these 4 kind of like pre-constructed decks were basically, I just made these just to kind of demonstrate how decks could be constructed, and so that people wouldn't, anyone who wanted to try the game at BCX, they didn't want to take the time to create their own deck because they just wanted to play the game. And that's what I suspected. So I just, I made it so that it was just ready to play just right off the bat. And yeah. And so I basically just had this box, and it was really nice. I'm glad that security let me carry this box in, thankfully. I was a little worried about that. But, I mean, it's just cards and, tokens and dice and everything like that. But yeah, I'm very proud of what I've made so far, this alpha version. In 2024, my goal with this game is to make a beta version, because when I play tested this game in BCX, a couple of things I noticed was that cards were too cheap, essentially. Um, Most cards were only cost like like one or two or three, and that meant that you could people tended to play as many cards as they possibly could, and that meant that more often than not, you'd run out of cards. You kind of have to just play the top card in your deck each turn, or top decking is the term, I believe. There was too much top decking in the game as it currently is, and while top decking is not terrible, it's not as fun because there's not really any strategy to it. You just at least there's minimal strategy to it. You just kind of have to work with what you have, and I want people to feel like they can do something almost any turn, essentially. And I mean, each game is only like 6 rounds anyway, so. But yeah, so I plan on making the cost of the cards a bit like I plan on increasing the cost of a lot of the cards. Maybe just increasing it, maybe just bumping it up by one. Honestly, so like most one cost cards will probably go up to two, for example. Most three will probably go up to four, and I think that'll be a lot more manageable. There are also some card effects and some location effects that were a bit confusing because I tried to make it so that you can just read the effect and not really have any questions about it. And there were some questions about how some effects worked. Because the thing with Marvel Snap is that Marvel Snap has programming behind it. If there's any question about how a card works, as long as the programming is right, as long as there's no bugs or no issues with the programming, then the cards will just resolve themselves without having to debate what it is. But with a physical card game, you kind of have to do that. Also, this alpha version is less like Marvel Snap than the pre-alpha version, and I'm trying to even though I'm using like the premise of Marvel Snap as a base, I'm trying to make it less and less a direct copy of Marvel Snap. Essentially, I'm trying to make it its own thing. And hopefully the beta version will have a bit more of its own identity. One thing I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to also look at a board game called Air, Land, and Sea, which is another game, which is another card game, a self-contained card game. It's a physical one that it also can be print and play. So I hope to print and play that one. Basically, it also has 3 locations, and you're trying to win locations by having more numbers on your side. I think there's a few other things going on with it. But I want to look at Air, Land, and Sea to see how they do carry on this premise of 3 location fighting for dominance over 3 locations and everything. I think I might so if I do that, and if I take some ideas from Air, Land, and Sea and some things from Marvel Snap and the resource management from the Digimon card game, all of these various things will allow Odin's Conquest to have its own identity. So yeah, I look forward to being able to develop this card game further, and I have some people who are willing to help me further with the design of the front and the back and everything. I think it's honestly very solid, but one thing that I'm also very disappointed by is like definitely not the art, but the way these cards were printed. Like there's something about like there's just like the resolution is of the resolution of the art as well as the text and just the whole card itself is not as crisp as I would like it to be, and so I need to figure out how to do that, and that might be more of a like I don't know, image editing issue or something. I still need to figure that out. But anyway, that's what's going on with the Brawlhalla card game that I'm making, Odin's Conquest, and I'm honestly like I'm pretty proud of what I've made so far with this, and I look forward to what it can become in 2024. My goal with Odin's Conquest is basically just to make a fun fan card game that anyone can play, anyone can like print on their own or play on Tabletop Simulator, and like maybe even like bring their decks to a LAN or something like that, and like play with people and things like that. And also a card game that is informed, at the very least, informed by Brawlhalla lore. So yeah, that's what I've got here, and I'm very proud of what I've made so far, like I said, and I'm excited for what's to come in the future for this. So this is always going to be a fan-made card game, unless I don't expect the Brawlhalla devs to like work directly with me. Obviously, it'd be great if they did, but unless something drastically changes, it's always going to be just a free fan-made card game for anyone to play. So, but But yeah, that's all I've got here. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, all the best.